What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Episode 30 of the Be Great podcast. And oh man, did we have a weekend of college football? Obviously, I know this is a Monday. I told everyone on Friday that this episode would be coming out on Monday because I will be out of town, obviously for Thanksgiving and this weekend's college football slate. So you will not be getting an episode on Friday, but I am going to try to get another episode out on Wednesday that has my game picks and my reaction to the playoff rankings, which should be very interesting this week considering how this past weekend's games went. So we're going to talk about the chaos that happened this past weekend. We're going to talk about what it means for the SEC, what it means for the country, what it means for the playoff rankings. I'll give an update on what I think the playoff rankings should change to and what I think they will change to. And that's just kind of what we're going to do here because there's a ton to talk about because a ton happened. Three main big upsets in the SEC, and Georgia on a day that they played UMass had the best day of any of them. Let's get into it. So, where should we start? Should we just, you know what? Let's talk about the chaos that was the SEC. Let's just talk about that first. So, obviously, as we know, Auburn upset Texas A&M. Oklahoma upset Alabama. Florida upset Ole Miss. Literally the three upsets that Georgia needed, and all three of them happened. I mean, that is something. I guess we can just go through each one here, one by one. Okay? Let's start with Ole Miss, Florida. This was always going to be a dangerous game for Ole Miss at the Swamp. Florida has a lot of momentum. DJ Lagway continues to get better and better each week. And Ole Miss did, honestly, the most Ole Miss thing I've ever seen in my entire life, where they had the playoff berth in their hands. It was right there in front of them, and they managed to completely fumble the bag. And I do not see a path with them as a three-loss team getting into the playoff, nor do they deserve it, and they shouldn't get into the playoff. They choked it away. Lane Kiffin did the most Lane Kiffin thing I've ever seen in my life. And, it almost makes you wonder. And we'll get into this when I talk about Alabama as well. But it almost makes you wonder if Ole Miss put everything they had into beating Georgia, that they had nothing left. That's what you really got to wonder. Florida has some momentum. Billy Napier's finishing out the season strong. I still don't think he's a good coach. I really don't. I think he has a special quarterback. And look, that's credit to him for recruiting him. I think he has a tremendous quarterback, and that's always going to make things look better than they actually are. But I don't have any delusions of grandeur that Florida is going to be, contention for an SEC title next year. I don't have any of those delusions. But they have momentum, and they've looked good the past 2 weeks. And I imagine they're going to beat Florida State into the dirt. So that's a good way to end the season for Billy. And I'm sure it makes the Florida program feel justified for saying he's coming back next year. But we'll see how that goes. Texas A&M loses to Auburn in a triple overtime thriller. Was it triple or was it quadruple? Was it 4 OT? It was 3 or 4 OT. I stayed up and watched it, and yet I don't remember. It was a thriller of a game. Auburn up 21-0, and then Texas A&M was able to crawl back, and it goes into overtime, and Auburn was able to get it done. And look, Texas A&M still has an opportunity. They face Texas this weekend. If they beat Texas, they're in the SEC championship, and at that point, they will just need to beat Georgia. That's kind of just where they're at right now. I think that they still have their destiny under their control. Okay, as long as they beat Texas and beat Georgia in back-to-back weeks, which is a tall task. It's a tall task because Georgia's not going to be in that SEC championship game saying to themselves, "Oh well, it's okay if we lose," because who knows with the way this committee's been doing these rankings. Who knows if Georgia loses in the SEC title, whether it be to Texas or Texas A&M, do, will they still be in the playoff? I have no confidence in that based off what this committee's been doing. But we'll have to wait and see. Tennessee also had a great week um, by playing UTEP, so they got to feel good about themselves as well. Them and Georgia are firmly in the playoff at this point. Um, and yeah, so Texas A&M still has everything in front of them. It's an embarrassing loss. Look, it was on the road at Jordan-Hare, which is always dangerous, but Auburn has been awful this year, and that's just a game you cannot lose. And it felt like such a look-ahead spot for Texas A&M, and you can't let stuff like that happen. You really can't. You got to maintain your focus. But they lost, and it is what it is. I kind of knew this Texas A&M game, this Texas A&M team was fraudulent. I always had that feeling. I predicted them when they lost. I predicted them to lose to South Carolina, which they did in embarrassing fashion, because I've known this team's been fraudulent all season, similar to their counterparts in Texas. But we'll see how that game goes. I'll make that game pick on Wednesday. And then Alabama got absolutely annihilated against Oklahoma. I thought I was living in an alternate timeline watching that game. Alabama could do nothing right. Oklahoma could do no wrong. And at the end of the day, that game, it sums up Alabama's season. Jalen Milroe, at times he can be electric, but at times he will completely cost you a game. And that's exactly what happened. Jalen Milroe was awful. And yeah, Oklahoma scored 24 points. That's not on the Alabama defense. Jalen Milroe put them in horrible positions all game. All game. The offense was horrible. And just to say this, by the way, every Alabama fan, I find it so hilarious. Every Alabama fan under the sun wants to talk about that penalty on Alabama on the Ryan Williams that negated the Ryan Williams touchdown and gave Oklahoma the ball. It would have turned a 24-3 game into a 24-10 game. So they would have not been down by 3 touchdowns. They would have been down by 2 touchdowns. And all I'm hearing is, oh, that's a big call. That costed Alabama. Let me explain something to you. As a Georgia fan, as someone who's watched the SEC ever since I was a kid, as someone who's experienced year after year when Nick Saban was in Alabama, year after year, the refs just giving Alabama every single timely call under the sun. Let me tell you right here, right now, I have no sympathy for what happened to them. Honestly, it felt more like justice is what it felt like. It felt like pinted up justice from all the years that they got every timely call imaginable. That's what it felt like. Because look, us Georgia fans, we remember the Tyler Simmons offsides call in the national championship game when Alabama came back and won. That shouldn't have been called offsides. It should have been a blocked punt. We remember that. We remember. So I don't want to hear about any, oh my God, Alabama got costed. The refs hate us. Shut up. Shut up. You get what you deserve. And you know what? More importantly, how about you don't go down 3 touchdowns in the first place so you don't need that play to begin with? Because you shouldn't have been down by 3 touchdowns to Oklahoma in the first place. So I don't want to hear that the refs costed you, that it's because of the refs that you lost. I don't want to hear it. Maybe you should tell Jalen Milroe to stop throwing interceptions. How about that? How about that idea? What a grand idea that is, huh? I don't want to hear it. I have no pity, no sympathy at all for that program and for that team. Nothing, nothing. But I'll tell you this: those three teams losing on the all three on the road. By the way, I mean I'm just curious. Kirby Smart after the Alabama game, or actually, he said it after the Kentucky game on the road. He said it again after the Alabama game on the road. He said it again after the Texas game on the road. He said it again after the Ole Miss game on the road. And I just wonder when people are going to start listening. What did Kirby Smart say? He said, listen, in this league, in the SEC, road games are very difficult. Doesn't matter who you're playing. And you saw that in all of its beauty on Saturday with three upsets. All three, the favorite team was on the road. Ole Miss was at Florida, Alabama was at Oklahoma, Texas A&M was at Auburn. It showed right there. And now Georgia is sitting here. I thought there was zero chance that I would be watching Georgia in the SEC championship. And now we're the only ones that are a lock for the SEC championship. I mean, oh man, and I don't know how I feel about it. Like at the end of the day, I'm happy that we have the chance to, play, get a top 4 seed, get a bye. I'm happy about that. But I am a little bit worried about what happens if we lose the game. And I'll get into that when I talk about the playoff rankings. And also when seeing the playoff rankings tomorrow night matters a lot as to how I feel about that. But as far as who I want to play in the SEC championship, Texas A&M easily. I think Texas A&M is the worst team of them in Texas, and I'm not a fan of facing a team twice, especially if we're the ones who won the first time. I'm not a fan of that. I don't like those odds, but Texas and Texas A&M both have been very up and down. To be honest, everyone's been up and down, but Georgia's sitting in a really good spot right now, and Tennessee's in a great spot right now. And I'll tell you this: if Georgia loses the SEC championship game and gets knocked out of the playoff, I will be very upset because I also don't understand how you could, if we lose to Texas or Texas A&M in the SEC championship game, you can't move us behind Tennessee. I don't care that Tennessee has 2 losses and we have 3 losses. That's because we played an extra game than them because we actually made the SEC championship. You know what? I'm already getting angry about something that hasn't happened. So let me just stop. I'll have to see where the rankings are tomorrow night before I make any snap judgments like that. But speaking of the committee and their rankings, I hope they realized after this past weekend how much disrespect they were giving to Georgia. We always want to talk about, oh, Georgia, they played a close road game against Kentucky. They didn't look good against Florida. They didn't look good against Mississippi State. You know what they did in all 3 of those games? They won. Go talk to the other teams who haven't looked good in these games where they should be winning. And guess what? They all lost. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, just lost to Florida. I mean, I'm just saying. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. How about we start giving more credit to what Georgia's done this season? And how about we start realizing that the fact that you had Georgia behind teams like Indiana, who got absolutely embarrassed this past weekend, and Kurt Signetti, this guy, I like the guy, but his little attitude when he loses, I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it. He just sounds dumb. He gets asked the question, so do you think Indiana still deserves to be in the playoff after this game and this performance? And he says, is that a serious question? Are you kidding me? I'm not even going to answer it. You know what, Kurt? I'm gonna tell you this: you're lucky. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Alabama all lost. You're very lucky because if those things hadn't have happened, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't be in this playoff because you don't deserve it because you've played nobody and you finally play somebody and you got absolutely annihilated. It was not a competitive game. I don't care what anyone tries to sell you. It was not a competitive game. And I had all the confidence in the world Ohio State was going to win. Are you kidding me? Indiana is not good. I'm also very frustrated that we keep giving Ohio State top 5 wins when the two teams that they have beaten that were in the top 5, I know you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, don't deserve to be in the top 5. Because guess what? That other team they beat, Penn State, almost lost to Minnesota. Not the Vikings. No, no, no. The Golden Gophers of Minnesota. They almost lost to them. So the fact that Georgia is behind Minnesota, or not Minnesota, Penn State and Indiana is a joke. And look, Georgia's going to move up no matter what because Alabama lost, Ole Miss lost. So Georgia's going to move up. I'm very intrigued to see where they have Indiana in these rankings. If Indiana is not behind Georgia, oh man, I don't know what I'll do. I don't know what I'll do. Honestly, we might get the longest episode of the Be Great podcast ever on Wednesday if Indiana is still ranked ahead of Georgia. Just to be honest. Just to be honest. Also, I just want to say, Alabama, after they beat Mercer, moved ahead of Miami. So because we just beat UMass, does that mean we now get to move ahead of Miami? I'm just wondering. I'm just curious, or is that just a one-way street? That's what it probably is. That's what I imagine it is. But just a question I'm asking. Just a question I'm asking. But Texas, they handled. Sorry, who did they face? Kentucky. Texas handled Kentucky at home. Texas continues to play nobody. Good for them, I guess. But they have a big game coming up this weekend with Texas A&M. I'm very interested to see how Texas does against their really only second good opponent of the season. So we will see. Notre Dame put the pain on Army. I mean, I knew Army wasn't going to win. Anyone who thought Army had a chance or Navy had a chance it's idiotic. It's idiotic. They run the triple option. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Against a disciplined and a really good defense, it's not going to happen. Period. Paragraph. I have more faith in USC beating Notre Dame than I did in Army beating Notre Dame. And I don't think USC is going to beat Notre Dame, but I have more faith in that than Army. Because I'll tell you what, a team that's getting overrated right now is Notre Dame. But that's typical. They always get that. But it would be a very Notre Dame thing to lose to USC. Be very Marcus Freeman. Oh, Arizona State beat BYU. Kind of saw that coming. BYU's falling off a cliff. No one is wanting to win the Big 12. They all want to apparently lose the Big 12. Even Colorado. Colorado got kind of embarrassed by Kansas. I mean, that game, like 37-21, doesn't look awful, but that game was a lot more dominant by Kansas than the score indicates. Like, Colorado at no point to me looked like they were going to win. At no point did they look like the better team. And I also, by the way, I just find this hilarious. I find it very difficult to watch a Colorado game because it doesn't matter who the commentators are. They are apparently the biggest Colorado fanboys that they could possibly find every week. I mean, oh my God, Travis Hunter could do the smallest thing, and you would think this guy is like he's Deion Sanders in his prime. I mean, oh my, this guy. Literally, I saw a play. There was a play where Travis Hunter, literally all he did, his route was literally a straight line, and no one covered him because it was zone. And Shadur just threw it. He was wide open and he caught it. And you would have thought that he hurdled one-handed OBJ catch, did a spin move, broke 5 ankles, and scored a touchdown. You would have thought he did that the way that they react. I mean, they were like, he's the best player on the field by a long shot. I mean, did you see that? He's just so amazing. I'm like, he ran a straight line and turned around. I mean, what are we talking about? No. How about we talk about the Kansas guys not covering him? I mean, come on. Travis Hunter is a tremendous player. He's going to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft, or at least he should be, depending on, who gets the first pick. But I don't know. The glazing is insane. It's insane. As far as the playoff, obviously Indiana's going to move back. Here's what I think it should be. I think Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3. To be honest, I think Georgia should. You know what? I'm just going to go with what I think it should be. I think Georgia should be 4. Then I would say Tennessee 5. I would say Penn State 6, Notre Dame 7, SMU 8, Miami 9, Boise State 10. Let's see. I guess Clemson 11, South Carolina 12. That's probably what I would say. Something like that. Something around there. What I think it's going to be. Here's what I have a bad feeling it's going to be. I think it's going to be Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, Texas 3, Penn State 4, because they're cowards and won't change Penn State. I think they're going to do Notre Dame 5, Miami 6, Georgia 7, Indiana 8, Tennessee 9, Boise State 10, SMU 11, and then Clemson 12, and then probably South Carolina 13. I think I have a feeling that's what they're going to do. I think Georgia's going to move up to 7. I think that's most likely where they will end up. And at the end of the day, I'd be fine if they move up to 7. I think they deserve to move up farther, but I'm also a Georgia fan. Maybe I'm biased. I will say this: the main way that you will make me rage about these rankings is if A, Indiana is still ahead of Georgia, or B, if someone who's behind Georgia for some reason jumps Georgia. That is the only 2 ways you will make me rage. And that goes not just for Georgia, for any team. I'll probably be upset if Indiana's ahead of Tennessee because they don't deserve to be ahead of Tennessee either. Indiana doesn't deserve to be ahead of SMU if we're being honest with ourselves. Miami doesn't deserve to be ahead of Georgia or Tennessee. Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be ahead of Georgia or Tennessee. Penn State and Texas don't deserve to be ahead of Georgia or Tennessee. But the committee doesn't want to have that conversation because they're just looking at the win-loss column. Or they're really just looking at the loss column. But that's it for episode 30. We're going to see how the playoff rankings go tomorrow night. And I'll be back on Wednesday to make some game picks to react to the playoff rankings. It's rivalry week. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. It is rivalry week, which is always exciting. Georgia is going to play on Black Friday, which is going to be an interesting change. It's going to feel weird watching Georgia on a Friday, but I actually kind of like it. And I didn't mention this earlier, but Texas and Texas A&M have their rivalry game on Saturday, but Georgia plays Georgia Tech on Friday, meaning Georgia gets an extra day to prepare for the SEC championship when you think about it. And the SEC championship game being in Atlanta is always nice because Georgia doesn't have to travel far. But again, that's neither here nor there. Um, I feel good about Georgia's game against Georgia Tech. The UMass game was all right. I mean, it was close for a little too long, in my opinion. Carson Beck should not have been in that game past halftime, but the game was too close at that point, I guess, for the coaching staff. I would have liked to see more of Gunnar Stockton. I would have liked to see Jaden Rashada a little bit, but at the end of the day, they won by a large margin, and that's what matters. I hope I see a lot out of them against Georgia Tech. I hope they come out with the fire against Georgia Tech and beat them senseless because it's a rivalry game, and I hate Georgia Tech. And but again, if Georgia for some reason loses to Georgia Tech, which would just make me lose my mind the day after Thanksgiving, then again, all they would have to do is win the SEC championship. All right, that's what needs to happen. And obviously I had said that at this point I would rather just not even be in the SEC championship game, and I still kind of stand by that. I would have been fine with just a home playoff game, but with the opportunity to play the SEC championship game and and hopefully win it and get a bye, that'd be nice. It'll be interesting to see. I would imagine if Georgia wins the SEC championship game, they'd be the 2 seed. That's what I would imagine. I cannot imagine they'll put the ACC champ or the Big 12 champ ahead of a 2 seed, ahead of the SEC champion. But yeah, I'm excited to see the playoff rankings tomorrow. I'm excited to be in the SEC championship game again. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great day. If for some reason I'm not able to get an episode uploaded on Wednesday, then that's okay. I hope everyone enjoys their Thanksgiving, enjoys rivalry week. I'm hoping to get an episode 31 uploaded on Wednesday. If not, then I will see all of you the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, which, by the way, is going to be a special birthday episode for your boy. Oh, yes. December 3rd, which is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, is my birthday, which I'm hoping to have an episode out on that day. Whether I record it actually on Tuesday, my birthday, or whether I recorded the day before, we'll see. But still, I'm going to consider it a special birthday extravaganza. Let's hope I'm a happy guy. Let's hope Georgia beats Georgia Tech, and I'm a happy guy going into that day. But we'll see. So enjoy the football. Enjoy Thanksgiving if I can't talk to y'all on Wednesday. Have a great, great Monday. And yeah, I love college football.